My husband cheated on me and told me I wasn't woman enough for him, and even my best friends defended him. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for a long time, I believed I was living a good life. I was married to Ryan Mitchell, a man everyone described as ambitious, successful, and charming. He knew how to win people over, and to anyone looking in from the outside, we seemed like the perfect couple. We had a home in a quiet neighborhood in North Carolina, steady jobs, and a tight circle of friends. Amanda and Kelsey, my best friends from college, were always around, and I thought they would always be in my corner. We looked solid. We were the couple who hosted backyard cookouts, the ones who seemed to have it all together. People admired us, and I let myself believe that what they saw was real. I thought I had built the kind of life that others dreamed of. But what I didn't realize was that I had been ignoring the warning signs right in front of me. Behind closed doors, Ryan was different. He had a sharp tongue, and his words cut deeper than he probably cared to admit. He'd make sly remarks about my body, calling them jokes, when I showed I was hurt. He'd criticize how I dressed, saying I didn't put in the same effort I once did. When I earned recognition at work, instead of being proud, he brushed it off and told me not to let it change me. I convinced myself these were small things, not worth a fight. I told myself every marriage had its challenges, and that he was just under pressure. I worked hard to keep peace in our home, excusing the way he treated me, telling myself that love meant pushing through the rough patches. But each time I looked in the mirror, I felt a little less like myself. One evening, everything shifted. Ryan came home later than usual, his shirt rumpled, carrying a scent that wasn't his. His demeanor was colder, distant, and for the first time, I couldn't convince myself it was just stress. My chest tightened, and deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. That night, my world began to unravel, and I was about to uncover a truth that would not only destroy my marriage, but also shake the foundation of my oldest friendships. The night I finally found the courage to look through Ryan's things, I felt my stomach twist. I wasn't the type of person to snoop, but something inside me wouldn't let me rest. His late nights, the sudden change in how he carried himself, and the way he kept his phone locked like it held state secrets. All of it had been piling up. And then I saw it. Her name popped up in his messages again and again. Lauren, a woman from his office. The words they shared weren't the kind of messages a husband should be sending to anyone but his wife. I felt my heart pound so loud it seemed to fill the whole room. When I asked him about it, I thought, maybe foolishly, that he would deny it, or maybe at least show some shame. Instead, Ryan looked me straight in the eye with the coldest expression I had ever seen and said, "You're just not woman enough for me." The words hit harder than anything he had ever said before. I couldn't even breathe. My hands shook, my throat closed, and I felt like the floor under me gave way. I needed comfort, someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. So I went to the only people I thought I could lean on, Amanda and Kelsey. We had shared every secret since college, laughed until our stomachs hurt, and held each other through breakups and heartbreak. If anyone was going to stand by me, I thought it would be them. I poured everything out, voice cracking, tears slipping down my face, waiting for the outrage I expected. But Amanda only sighed and said, "Marriage is hard. Maybe he just slipped." I blinked at her, not believing what I had just heard. Slipped. That's what she called it. A man carrying on with another woman behind my back? Before I could respond, Kelsey added, "Don't throw everything away over this." Her words were calm, almost scolding, as if I was overreacting. I sat there, staring at both of them, my chest aching, unable to understand how the people I trusted most could defend him. I felt smaller in that moment than I ever had before. It wasn't just my husband betraying me, it was my friends too. Instead of reaching for me, they pushed me further down, siding with the man who had torn me apart. And in that instant, I realized I was completely on my own. Ryan packed a bag and left the house a few days later. He didn't slam the door, he didn't cry, he didn't even look guilty. He walked around with this smug grin on his face, as if he was the one who had been wronged, as if I should feel grateful he had even stayed with me for as long as he did. He actually said it once, tossing it over his shoulder before he left. "You're lucky I stayed faithful this long." The words hung in the air like poison. I stood there frozen, not even able to respond, because my voice felt trapped in my throat. At first, I thought maybe the space would give me time to think, time to decide what I wanted to do next. But the silence in the house didn't bring peace. It brought whispers. It seemed like everyone knew something about my marriage, and somehow, the story spreading through town didn't paint Ryan as the problem. People began pulling away from me. Friends who used to call every other day suddenly had excuses. I caught neighbors glancing my way in the grocery store, their voices dropping when I walked past. When I finally asked Amanda why no one was talking to me, she shifted uncomfortably and muttered, "Some people think you pushed him away." My stomach dropped. Pushed him away? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Soon enough, I realized the gossip had taken on a life of its own. The story wasn't that Ryan betrayed me, it was that I had failed him, that I wasn't enough, that I drove him into someone else's arms. The shame was unbearable. Every time I stepped outside, I felt like the world was staring, whispering, judging. Even simple errands felt like walking through a storm. I would sit in my car outside the store, gripping the steering wheel, forcing myself to breathe before going in. I felt stripped down to nothing, like my whole identity had been taken and twisted into a story that wasn't mine. At home, I replayed Ryan's words again and again. "You're not woman enough." They echoed in my head until I started to wonder if he was right. I'd stand in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection, trying to see what he saw. What was missing? What had I done wrong? I stopped sleeping, replaying every fight, every small moment where maybe I could have done something different. But underneath the shame and the sadness, something else began to stir. It started as a faint spark, buried deep under the weight of his words and the sting of betrayal. The more I thought about everything, the smug way he walked out, the way my friends defended him, the lies people whispered about me, the more that spark grew. It was anger, quiet at first, but steady, glowing stronger every day. For the first time since it all began, I felt something other than pain. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let Ryan's words be the last thing that defined me. The invitation came from a couple we had both known for years. At first, I wasn't sure if I should go, but part of me wanted to prove that I wasn't hiding. I wanted to show my face, to remind myself that I still belonged in the circles Ryan and I once shared. I got dressed, forced a smile, and told myself I would make it through a simple barbecue. When I walked into the backyard, I felt dozens of eyes turned toward me. Some smiled politely, some didn't smile at all. I tried to steady my breathing, telling myself I could handle whatever came my way. But then I saw him, Ryan, and he wasn't alone. Lauren was right beside him, her hand looped through his arm like she belonged there. She laughed at something he whispered, tilting her head against his shoulder as though she had been in his life for years, not months. It felt like a punch to the chest. My body froze, my feet heavy against the grass, but I forced myself to keep moving, pretending it didn't matter. I sat down at one of the tables, clutching a cup I didn't even drink from. I told myself not to look, but my eyes kept drifting back to them. Ryan had this smug expression, like he knew everyone was watching, like he wanted me to see him flaunting her. The worst part wasn't just him, it was Amanda and Kelsey. They stood near the grill, chatting and laughing with Ryan and Lauren as though nothing had happened, as though the betrayal meant nothing. I waited for them to glance at me, to give me some kind of signal that they still cared. But they didn't. They laughed at his jokes, complimented Lauren's dress, and never once came to sit beside me. I felt like a ghost, invisible at my own friends' gathering. Every laugh from their corner made the air around me heavier. The humiliation pressed down until I couldn't take it anymore. I left without saying goodbye, my face hot, my throat burning with the effort of holding back tears. That night, I lay awake replaying it all. The way Ryan paraded Lauren, the way Amanda and Kelsey stood by his side, the way I had been left sitting alone. But something shifted in me. I realized I couldn't keep living like this, letting them decide who I was. I made a silent promise in the dark. My revenge wouldn't come through shouting or tearing them down. It would come by rising above them, by showing them the strength they thought I didn't have. They would see me, not the broken woman they expected, but the woman they never believed I could be. After that night, something inside me hardened. I woke up the next morning knowing I couldn't keep living as the woman Ryan and my so-called friends painted me to be. For too long, I had put myself second, his career first, his comfort first, his needs first. It was time to stop. It was time to take my life back. Not long after, my boss called me into the office. Months ago, he had offered me a promotion, a role that meant longer hours and more responsibility. Back then, I turned it down because Ryan said it would get in the way of our marriage. Sitting across from my boss this time, I didn't hesitate. I said yes. Walking out of that office, I felt a spark of pride I hadn't felt in years. For once, I had chosen myself. I also began making small changes at home. I cleaned out the pantry, stocked it with food that made me feel good instead of heavy and tired. I started walking every evening, just around the neighborhood at first, letting the cool air clear my head. Soon, those walks turned into jogs, and those jogs into workouts. Day by day, I began to feel my strength return, not just in my body, but in my spirit. The mirror no longer reflected a woman beaten down by cruel words. Slowly, I began to recognize myself again. Work became a safe place for me. I threw myself into projects, determined to prove what I was capable of. That's when I started spending more time around Ethan Roberts, a colleague I had always known but never really noticed. He wasn't flashy like Ryan, and he didn't try to charm anyone. He was steady, thoughtful, and kind in ways that caught me off guard. He remembered small things like how I take my coffee, or that I preferred quiet lunches instead of crowded break rooms. One afternoon, when I apologized for running late to a meeting, he simply smiled and said, "Don't worry, Sarah. You do more than enough." Those words hit me harder than I expected. More than enough. The exact opposite of what Ryan had told me. I wasn't falling for him. Not yet, maybe not for a long time. But Ethan reminded me of something I had almost forgotten, what it felt like to be treated with respect. Each step I took, each choice I made for myself, added up. My confidence wasn't back all at once, but it was building. I was no longer defined by what Ryan had said or done. Piece by piece, I was becoming someone stronger, someone who no longer lived in his shadow. It had been months since Ryan walked out, and by then I had learned to live without him. I thought nothing about his life could hurt me anymore, but then I heard the news. A mutual acquaintance mentioned casually that Ryan was planning to propose to Lauren. The words cut through me like a blade, not because I wanted him back, but because of how quickly he had tried to replace me, to pretend our years together meant nothing. He hadn't just betrayed me, he wanted to rewrite our story with her as if I never existed. The same day I learned something else that made my stomach churn. I found out Amanda and Kelsey hadn't just defended him with words. They had covered for him. Times when I had called, wondering why Ryan wasn't home, they had lied for him. They had knowingly stood by, keeping his secrets, while I cried on their shoulders. They hadn't been friends at all. They had chosen him over me long before I even knew the truth. That night I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at my glass of water, my hands trembling with a mixture of rage and clarity. For weeks I had let people think I was weak, that I had been abandoned and left to wallow in pity. But I wasn't weak. I was angry, and I was ready to take that anger and turn it into something sharp. I didn't want to scream at them or throw things. No, that wasn't me. My revenge would come another way. So I made a plan. I called Ryan, my voice calm, almost sweet. I told him I wanted closure, that I wanted us to sit down and talk like adults. I said it would mean a lot to me if Lauren could come too. Then I reached out to Amanda and Kelsey, spinning the same story, that I was tired of bitterness, that I wanted peace, that I hoped we could all sit at the same table and finally end the tension. They bought it. Every single one of them. As I hung up after the last call, a strange calm washed over me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt in control. I pictured them all sitting there, smug and comfortable, believing I was still the broken woman they had left behind. They wouldn't see it coming. The truth I planned to lay out piece by piece, each word a mirror showing them what they really were. This wasn't about begging for understanding or asking for apologies. This was about pulling the mask off every one of them. Ryan with his arrogance, Lauren with her ignorance, Amanda and Kelsey with their betrayal. I would invite them into what they thought was a safe space, and then I would shatter the lies they had built together. For the first time in a long time, I almost smiled. The stage was set. The night of the dinner arrived, and I walked into the restaurant with my head held high. My heart was beating hard, but I refused to let it show. Ryan was already there with Lauren at his side, laughing as though nothing in the world could touch him. Amanda and Kelsey sat across from them, sipping their drinks and smiling like they belonged on his team. I slid into my seat calmly, my expression steady, my voice smooth when I greeted them. They looked almost surprised to see me so composed. The small talk didn't last long. Ryan leaned back in his chair with that smug grin I had grown to hate. "So, Sarah," he said, "is this your big closure moment?" His words were meant to sting, but they barely grazed me. I folded my hands on the table and looked at him directly. "I invited you all here for honesty," I said quietly. "And since none of you seem capable of giving it, I'll do it myself." Before anyone could speak, I pulled a small folder from my bag. Inside were printed emails, hotel receipts, and screenshots. Proof I had gathered over weeks of searching. I placed them on the table one by one. Ryan wasn't only with Lauren, I said even. There were others. Several others. Lauren's face drained of color as her eyes darted to the paper. She picked up one of the receipts, her hands trembling, and whispered, "You told me I was different." Her voice cracked before she pushed her chair back and stood. Without another word, she stormed out of the restaurant, leaving Ryan sputtering. I didn't stop there. I turned my gaze toward Amanda and Kelsey. They shifted uncomfortably, their smiles fading. From my folder, I pulled out the texts they had sent each other, the ones where they mocked me, where they laughed at my pain, where they agreed to cover for Ryan. I laid them out in front of them like cards in a losing hand. "I leaned on you," I said, my voice calm, almost gentle. "I thought you were my friends, but this is who you are when I wasn't around." Neither of them spoke. Their faces turned pale, their mouths opened, but no words came. They sat frozen in their seats, unable to deny it, unable to explain. Ryan, on the other hand, exploded. He slammed his fist against the table, his face twisted in rage. "You went digging through my life," he shouted. "You think you're better than me? You're pathetic." I didn't flinch. I rose slowly from my chair, smoothing my dress as I stood. I looked around at all three of them, Ryan red with anger, Amanda and Kelsey drowning in shame, Lauren gone in disgust. "Thank you," I said softly, "for showing me exactly who you are." Then I walked out, leaving them in the wreckage of their own choices, my steps steady, my heart lighter than it had been in years. After that night, everything began to shift, and for once it wasn't me who carried the weight of shame. The story of Ryan's affair spread quickly. I hadn't told anyone outside that dinner, but people talk, and Ryan had made himself far too visible with his arrogance. Whispers started in his office first. A co-worker of his, who had always suspected something, saw the receipts and messages that Lauren had stormed out with. It didn't take long before everyone knew he wasn't the faithful, hard-working husband he pretended to be. At work, Ryan's image started to crumble. He had always been the man who bragged about his discipline and self-control, but suddenly no one respected him anymore. Colleagues looked at him with disgust, bosses pulled back from him, and those who once admired him began to keep their distance. He hated it. I could tell by the few bitter messages he sent me, trying to shift blame, but I never answered. His downfall wasn't my burden. He had done it to himself. Lauren didn't stay by his side for long. At first, she kept quiet, avoiding me and avoiding questions. But when she realized she had been nothing more than one name on a long list of women, she couldn't take it. She was furious at him for lying to her face, for making her believe she was special. Their relationship collapsed quickly, ending with her storming out of his life, just as she had stormed out of that restaurant. Ryan was left alone, the woman he flaunted gone, his reputation in ruins. Amanda and Kelsey didn't escape untouched either. Their betrayal of me sat heavy between them. They had spent years calling themselves my closest friends, yet when the truth came out, they were the ones who looked the worst. People saw their messages, saw their part in covering up Ryan's lies. Neither of them could deny it. Soon, their friendship with each other began to crack. Amanda accused Kelsey of saying too much, while Kelsey accused Amanda of pushing her into things. What had once been a bond built on shared secrets now turned into a wall of blame. They weren't laughing together anymore. And me? I wasn't the one people whispered about anymore. I wasn't the victim in their stories. I was the woman who stood up, who walked away, who refused to be dragged down by lies. I didn't need to scream or fight to bring them down. They destroyed themselves with their choices. I walked away untouched, my head clear, my shoulders light. The chains that had once held me, his words, their betrayal, the gossip, were gone. I was free of all of them, and I didn't look back. Life felt different once the weight of Ryan and the others was gone. The silence that used to scare me now felt peaceful. I no longer sat around wondering what people thought of me or waiting for someone else to tell me my worth. I began focusing on things I had pushed aside for years, things that had once made me happy. I signed up for an art class at the community center, something I had always dreamed of doing but never found the time for. I bought myself the paints and brushes Ryan used to call a waste of money. Each evening, I poured myself into colors and shapes, and for the first time, I created something just for me. I also began cooking again, not meals meant to please someone else, but recipes I had wanted to try, flavors that reminded me of who I was before I lost myself. At work, I flourished in my new role. The promotion was demanding, but instead of draining me, it filled me with energy. I liked the challenge, the respect I earned from colleagues, and the satisfaction of seeing projects succeed because of my ideas. For years, I had let Ryan convince me that my job was secondary to his, but now I knew the truth. I was capable of more than I had ever been allowed to believe. I also allowed myself to explore the world beyond my small circle. I booked a trip by myself, just a weekend in a city I had always wanted to see. Walking those unfamiliar streets alone gave me a sense of freedom I had never experienced before. No one's hand to hold, no one to lead me where they wanted to go, just me deciding, me choosing, me living. That taste of independence made me want more, and I promised myself I would keep exploring, no matter how far or near. Through all of this, Ethan remained a steady presence. He never pushed, never asked for more than I was ready to give. Sometimes we shared lunch at work. Other times we just exchanged small jokes that lightened the day. His kindness reminded me of what it meant to be respected, to be valued for who I was, not for what I lacked. I didn't rush into anything with it, but I treasured the reminder that not all men used love as a weapon. The more I lived, the more I realized that my revenge wasn't about watching Ryan, Amanda, or Kelsey fall apart. It wasn't about their pain at all. My revenge was standing tall, smiling, and knowing that I had risen above everything they tried to take from me. The real victory was in proving that I was always more than enough. I didn't need their approval, their friendship, or their love. I only needed to rediscover my own. Ryan's words used to echo in my mind late at night, sharp and cruel. You're not woman enough for me. For a while, I believed him. I let those words cut deep, and I carried them like proof that something was missing in me. But now, looking back at everything, I see the truth more clearly than ever. He was wrong. His insult wasn't about me, it was about him. The man who said I wasn't enough was the one who kept chasing women, attention, and lies because he could never be satisfied with himself. His betrayal, his arrogance, all of it came from his own emptiness. I see that now. The weight I carried was never mine to bear. It belonged to him. Amanda and Kelsey hurt me in a way I never expected. Friends are supposed to stand beside you when life falls apart, but instead, they defended him and left me to face the storm alone. For a long time, that pain sat heavy in my chest. But losing them forced me to see that not everyone who calls themselves a friend is truly one. Their betrayal made room for me to build a life without people who didn't respect me. And in that space, I grew stronger. I began to discover new parts of myself. I poured energy into my work and flourished in ways I had once been too afraid to try. I picked up hobbies I'd left behind, traveled to places I'd only dreamed of, and learned the joy of doing things for myself. I found freedom and independence and peace in simply choosing my own path. Through it all, I realized my revenge was never about tearing them down. Their lives unraveled on their own. My real revenge was proving, to myself and to anyone watching, that I was always more than enough. That I didn't need Ryan's approval, or Amanda's support, or Kelsey's laughter. I didn't need validation from people who couldn't see my worth in the first place. Ethan reminded me of what kindness looks like, but even without him, I would still have stood tall. Because strength wasn't something someone else gave me, it was something I had all along. Ryan said I wasn't woman enough. He was wrong. My so-called friends betrayed me, but I gained something better. I gained myself, my confidence, my independence, and the ability to stand without fear. If anyone ever tries to convince you that you're not enough, remember this. It says far more about them than it ever will about you. And the greatest victory comes not from proving them wrong, but from proving to yourself that you were always whole, always strong, and always enough. What would you do if the people you trusted most betrayed you? Walk away or give them another chance? For me, leaving was the best choice. I found strength, peace, and freedom. Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like